I'm not sure if you guys have ever been skydiving or anyone listening, but the first time I went skydiving, I had this massive adrenaline rush for like 2 days leading up to it. I'm about to throw myself out of a plane. And I remember throwing myself out the plane, I hit the ground and I'm shaking. I've got that much adrenaline running through my body. It was an incredible experience. An hour and a half later on the way home, I was asleep in the car because it just all runs from your body and, you know, like you just want to sleep. You're exhausted. You've got no energy. That was like the block.
Welcome to Season 2 of Voices of Value, a conversation between Peter Kakos and Rik Rushton and their high-achieving guests from professional sport, Olympians, business leaders, and ordinary people with value hacks to share through simple life lessons. If you're keen to reach your next level personally and professionally, sit back and join the conversation with your hosts, Rik and Peter.
And welcome to another episode of Voices of Value. This is Peter Kakos here, of course, alongside me, Ricky Rushton.
Pete, can I just start off by saying you're one of my closest friends. I want this to be absolutely public. I thought your auction on the block was absolutely outstanding. And despite the fact that our firstborn child thought Cooley was better, he's now out of the family. But in all seriousness, mate, we were just so thrilled with the way you were able to make the best out of a pretty tricky situation. You know, it was almost like you got barrier 23 in the Melbourne Cup. You had to sort of do a lot from a bad barrier draw, no momentum in the race. You just picked up the horse, threw it over the line. Not like you didn't have a great product, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but in all seriousness, mate, an amazing job, despite the fact that Scott thought this was your first auction of all time. We thought you did a great job.
I certainly got set up there, so maybe we might talk a bit about that through the course of today's podcast. But we're going to talk block today, all things block, and we've had a lot of questions through the week, so we thought we'd bring in no other than the man himself, Mr. Jesse Raeburn.
Yeah, and that's our studio applause, which is going gangbusters.
Thanks
Jesse,
very much.
welcome. You've had a big week, but this is the highlight, clearly.
This is certainly the most exciting thing to happen to me in the last 72 hours, I believe, sitting down with...
So you didn't see that comedy side, did you?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I didn't see that on any of the episodes of The Block much.
But Jesse, this was a lifelong dream for you, and I remember being on the block last year when you were an agent for Courtney and Hans, and I was an agent for Bianca and Carla. We got chatting, and I just absolutely was so engaged with your energy, your enthusiasm, the way you went about it. And I did walk up to you during that season and said, you will work for me one day.
Pete did actually say that to me. He said, you will work for me one day. And I said, yeah, I know I will. And then he said it in front of my boss the next time I saw him. I said, I thought that was a private conversation, not public knowledge at this moment in time.
And now Jesse says that I will work for him one day.
That's right. I think that's right. I think that's very spot on. So, but this was a goal you had from a 14-year-old boy imagining being on the block, correct?
Yeah, I was 14 years old watching the first season of the block, obviously in Bondi there with the family, and said to them, I'm going to get on the block one day. And I've applied 3 times in total when I was like 19, 20 years old. And then when I moved to Melbourne, that was the goal. It's like, I'm going to get on the block. I would love to be a contestant. But obviously 100,000 individuals apply every year, 50,000 couples. So the chances of being selected are extremely slim.
Yep.
And I thought I didn't like those odds. I had to do something more to get on the show. And so I put a plan into place New Year's Eve 2 years ago and went about executing that plan and literally ticked every single one of those boxes and jumped every hurdle to get myself on the show as a contestant.
So that first box would have been to actually get on there as an agent, yeah?
Yeah, well, so the goal was to become an agent, to obviously meet the right people, to then get on as a contestant. But even that as itself, you know, it's the hardest contended listing in Australia. Every single agent wants to be on there, and you're competing against blokes like yourself who've been in real estate for, 25, 30 years, some very senior agents. And I worked for a boutique agency. They've never heard of us before. I was working for one of the other agents who are on the show this year, obviously Wilson Agents I was on. And I thought, well, I'm not going to get on because of my experience, and I'm certainly not going to get on because we have a massive agency profile. It needs to be off my own back. And so I come up with a plan to actually sell them a property. So if I could sell them a property, they could use it on one of the seasons, and I would meet the person who makes all the decision to hopefully impress him enough to be selected as an agent, to hopefully impress him enough to become a contestant. And that was December in 2017. I came up with that plan. And when I came back to Melbourne, after being away on the holiday as well as my family on the Gold Coast, I went and hunted a listing that would be impressive enough. I ended up listing a property for $15 million, pretty close to where the Oslo is. And then went about trying to find this bloke, Julian, who buys all the properties. And getting in contact with him is actually quite difficult. Well, it was 2 years ago. Now I speak to him every day. But at the time, he was like this mythical creature. And I had no idea how to find him. And I had this awesome listing. I wanted to sell it to him. And so over the next 3 months, I went about I'm cold calling Channel 9 saying I need to speak to Julian. I'm dropping him emails. He's got 2 email addresses, dropping him messages on LinkedIn and just absolutely ghosted. I was like, there needs to be a better way. I started going to networking events saying, have you heard of this bloke, Julian? Have you ever met him? Do you know who he is? And I was at a networking event and I said, look, I really want to meet this guy, Julian Cress. If anyone knows him, please introduce me to him. And it was one of my friends from another, Hocking Stewart, who said, I know the guy, but I can't give you his number. And I was like, well, what do I have to do to meet him? And they said, well, we're trying to find 5 houses to use on an episode of The Block. Like last season, I said, well, what house are you looking for? They said, we're looking for an old period home. I said, perfect. Ran out the meeting, called a friend of mine who just renovated the oldest house in St Kilda. He just signed a lease agreement. The tenant was moving in 2 weeks. I said, Frank, how would you like to get your house on TV? I can make that happen. Because obviously I didn't ask him, can I use it? I said, how would you like to? He's a bit egotistical as well. And he said, I don't know. I said, you just signed a lease. I said, look, I'm telling you, if you get your house on TV, the next time you go to sell it, it'll get massive media coverage. We'll sell it for an extra 10%. The house is already worth $4 million. That made him very excited. So he called the tenant and said, would you mind delaying moving in a couple of weeks? I need to use it for something. And they said yes. And so then I took all the production crew down to the house to have a look at it. They were all salivating. It's like the oldest house in St Kilda. Alfred Felton, you know Alfred Felton?
Not personally, no.
Right, well, so he actually, a third of the artwork at the National Gallery of Victoria was donated by this guy Alfred Felton in like the 1900s. It's still worth $3 billion to this day. He owned that house in 1880, Wattle House. And then Felton moved to the Espy. And when he was living at the Esplanade, which is where he passed away, he was renovating that house. So massive history in St Kilda. My friend owns it. I got it on the show. Then in return was given this guy Julian's number. And this is, I couldn't believe this. I called Julian and say, hey mate, I've got this awesome listing for you. You need to buy it in St Kilda. He goes, what's the address? I told him the address. He goes, someone else is selling that. I said, no, I'm pretty sure I'm selling it. It's exclusive. He goes, no, someone from Wilson. I said, yeah, that's me. I said, why didn't you reply? He's like, I've been getting emails and that. I don't know. I've been too busy.
Yeah, I'm letting my lawyer reply with a restraining order to stop this guy from hounding me.
Exactly. So he already knew about it. He said, I'm already looking at it with my architect. I'm going to be down next Tuesday. I said, well, why don't I meet you at the property and we'll walk around it? So I spent about 45 minutes with the guy trying to sell it to him. I was asking $15 million. It was only worth about $8 million. It was $7 million overpriced. And he said to me, he goes, Jesse, this is the most overpriced listing in Australia. I said, I know it is, but you guys are the worst developers in Australia. And the only people crazy enough to pay such a big price because you make all your money in advertising. And I said, we're going to build 5 brand new terrace homes and we'll make them look like Victorians. There'll be 3 stories. It'll be amazing. Double car garage at the rear. He said, look, it's not going to work for us, but I love your hustle. Why don't I introduce you to some contestants? I think you'd be really good on the show. And that's how I got introduced to Courtney and Hans to become an agent.
So very clear plan, very strong vision, was prepared to really make it happen. All the stuff we talk about, Peter, in this podcast about having the real high achievers understand the difference between stating a preference, I'd like to be on the show, versus I'm making this an absolute must do and I'll do whatever it takes. I'm surprised you didn't go pick him up from the airport and bring him to the property direct, but that's what I hear in all of that.
So the gentleman that Jesse talks of is Julian Cress, who is the executive producer of The Block, one of the smartest minds in television. He was the co-creator of The Block, and just an incredible man, and has done some amazing things. And The Block is what it is today. I think there was something like, I don't know, is there 3 million viewers or something like that on Block auction night, something like that. Just a few people that watch it, but it's amazing. Hanging out with Jesse, and we go to cafes and stuff like that, and during the filming, people would come past and go House 5, go House 5. It's actually quite amusing. But they saw an interesting side to you on the show, Jess, that Oh, I guess how were you described? You were described as arrogant, as egotistical, argumentative, all these sorts of things here. I think we could probably tick all those boxes.
Yeah, I think there's a few more we could add.
However, one thing that became really evident throughout, and particularly it was like a crescendo to the end of the show, is how hard a worker you were and also how much you gave to the other contestants along the way. It's a mental as well as a physical challenge, yeah? So maybe let's start on that. Let's talk about the mental and physical side of doing the block.
Yeah, so the hard work is not the hardest thing about the block. I used to be a tradesman, so I love hard work. I've done 12, 14 hours today, 12, 14 hour work days in 40 degree heat in 100% humidity in North Queensland. So hard work that's not the hardest thing about the show. It's the mental side of it and the sleep deprivation. On average, you would get 4 hours sleep per night. And I know how I feel typically after like one night bad sleep, you know what I mean? Like it ruins your morning almost, let alone going 14 weeks, averaging 4 hours sleep a night. Only 2 Saturdays out of the 14 did I sleep. So I was waking up Saturday morning, 6 a.m. and I'd go to bed Sunday at about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So that's the hardest thing about it, I think, is the sleep deprivation. And then the mental side of it, you're in what we call a block bubble, and all the producers are obviously trying to get content from you, and you start getting extremely paranoid. A bit of linen will go missing and you're abusing the producer. You're saying, you've hidden it from me. And one of the funniest moments was Andy and Deb thought a producer had stolen their bed, like a king-size bed, and they can't tell you anything. And Andy and Deb are running around for an hour blaming everyone for losing the bed. They were actually walking over the top of it for an hour. It was in wrapping on the floor with rubble on it, and they were stepping over it. And you literally start to lose your mind. It's almost like cabin fever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of negativity on the show. Like a lot of the judges' feedback is quite negative. A lot of the feedback from Keith and Dan can be quite negative. And so you're constantly trying to fight against that. And I copped a lot of negativity for the first 4 weeks in particular. Like you said, a lot of people said I was a smart ass, I was arrogant, he's full of himself, he's not going to make it. And that to me was really hard because I'm a very positive and optimistic person and I love to help people.
Yeah.
And my way, I think, of combating that negativity was to go over the top with my level of confidence and enthusiasm. And it was funny because at the start, Australia really didn't know how to take me, and they said all the words that you said. But then they started to see that, well, I actually was doing the work. It's one thing to talk a big game, but if you can back it up, then I think you win people's respect. And that's why towards the end of the show, I really started to earn the respect of Australia.
Sure, yep.
And, at the start, people in cafes would come up the first couple of weeks when I'm on the show and go, oh, hi, Jesse, I don't really like you on the show. And then those same people towards the end of the show were going, I didn't like you at the start, but now I think you're bloody awesome. People were just full of confidence to come up because I had such a massive change in the public perception. Everyone was saying that I didn't like you at the start, but now I love you.
Yeah.
And we really think, you guys deserve to win. You're working really hard. And that was quite humbling for people to be saying that.
And I think the other thing is that what wasn't realistically known from our audience is just before we started recording, Jesse was asked to have a selfie with someone he's just met for the first time right here in our recording studio. And, it was really just so humbling the way that he said, hang on, I know you guys have got a tight time frame, but this person wants to have a photo, so let's get this done right.
Yeah.
In the end, she was struggling to do a selfie, so you took over for her, offered to help. And I think that's what I'm seeing there. But it's not just your mental challenge, it was also your beautiful partner Mel's challenge. So that must have stressed you guys as a couple. So it's hard enough to be a couple in 2019, 2020, Pete, just with the normal stresses in day-to-day life, let alone on reality TV with tight time frames, sleep deprivation. Talk us through what that was like to not just have all the flow on you, but also the mental challenge between you and Mel as couples.
Yeah, Mel and I, for the first 4 weeks in particular, really struggled. That was the hardest, probably the most difficult times we've ever had in our relationship. And that was because it was my dream to be on the show. It wasn't Mel's.
Right.
Mel had never watched the show before.
Yep.
And when we decided to go onto it, Mel didn't want to do it. Mel said, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea about renovating, about real estate, about styling. She's a confident person when she knows you, but if you don't, she's actually quite shy. And so for the first 4 weeks, she was like, what am I doing here? Like, you're doing the styling, you're doing all the interior design, you're doing all the tradesman work. Like, what am I doing here? And I'm like, just do whatever you can. That's all you need to do. Do whatever you can, support me, clean up. As long as you're having a good time, I don't mind if you don't do anything. As long as you're busy, that's fine. And it was really tough for her because she honestly felt like she was quite hopeless and sort of helpless and really out of her comfort zone.
But she grew throughout the series.
She did grow. And that was, I believe, for me, the most rewarding thing about the entire experience was watching Mel like really blossom from start to finish. And she just became this super confident person. She loved talking to the camera. I was falling in love with her, watching her on the show even more.
How cool is that? It's so cool.
It was amazing.
So you won some money at the end, but you really won a life partner and saw the best of her in that particular, you're never going to be in that sort of stress in the rest, hopefully, touch wood, you're never going to be in that sort of stress for the rest of your life.
I remember my wife telling me that when we travelled, it's like, this is the big test when we travel and so forth. But the big test is really the block, isn't it?
14 weeks in a bubble and, all that sort of thing. Because you told me in a private chat we had a few weeks back that when the filming stopped, she virtually slept for almost was it 2 days or something? She just collapsed on a bed and just didn't get off it for a day or two.
Yeah, Mel, we didn't leave our bedroom for 3 days.
3 days, wow.
3 days, literally. And I think we would have, instead of only sleeping for 4 hours and being awake for 20, we would have only been awake for 4 hours and we were sleeping for 20.
So does that physically, mentally just drained you out, emptied you out, and you just go, we are just needing to recover here?
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I'm not sure if you guys have ever been skydiving or anyone listening, but the first time I went skydiving, I had this massive adrenaline rush for like 2 days leading up to it. I'm about to throw myself out of a plane. And I remember throwing myself out the plane. I hit the ground and I'm shaking. I've got that much adrenaline running through my body. It was an incredible experience. An hour and a half later on the way home, I was asleep in the car because it just all runs from your body and you just want to sleep. You're exhausted. You've got no energy.
Yeah.
That was like the block. Because in a normal day scenario, you wouldn't be able to work 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. You would just go, I'm just going to go to bed. I'll just stop. But you do not have that choice.
Yeah.
And there's so much excitement and things happening and drama that keep your adrenaline. So you run on adrenaline for 14 weeks. As soon as that stops, you just collapse. A lot of people get sick after the show. I know a couple of contestants were like quite ill for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
They almost like come down with like a flu or a fever, because your body is exhausted and your body wants to stop.
Yes.
Like there were people on the show, I won't name them, but like they were like nauseous. They were like people laying in the fetal position in at the bottom of a shower, like grown men, like, one of the ladies was like physically ill, like throwing up in the hallway. I know the first week Mel went to sit down and woke up and had no idea where she was. She almost like passed out from exhaustion. And it's the only time I've seen Mel cry was in the first 4 days. She came to see me and I was like, are you okay? She couldn't talk. I honestly thought she lost a family member. That's how distraught she looked. Right. And I said, what's happened? And she said, I didn't know where I was. Like I went to sit down. I don't remember sitting down. I woke up on the floor. I didn't know where you were. I just wanted to come and find you, like just to give you a hug. It was extreme.
Mel was just incredible, and so many people have said, is she really, like that? You couldn't get a more comforting, nurturing type person than Mel, and she's just, the support she showed for you and the support was just off the charts.
And so
unbelievable.
what were some of the coping, because what you're describing there, it's almost like you're under a bloody siege mentality for 14 weeks. What were some of the strategies, the coping strategies that I know you said, just do what you can, whatever you can will be enough, keep busy, but she grew past that. So you two must have had some sort of strategies as a couple that you were implementing to get you through, not just through, but allowed you to thrive through that sort of by the end.
Yeah, well, like I said, the first 4 weeks Mel and I struggled because we were working against each other. We were butting heads, but then after that we started to work together. And so on a Sunday night we would already have our floor plan, which we wanted to do, set out. Then we'd sit down together and run through all the pros and cons. And then on the Monday night we would actually do our shopping together. So we knew which sponsor stores we were going to go to. So together we would look at your Freedom, your West Elm, and we would choose all the furnishings for that room. We'll choose the carpet we're going to use. We already come up with like the wardrobe design. And so every decision that we were making, we ended up making together. And so it took a lot of that pressure from her and a lot of pressure from me because we were agreeing on everything before we started. We never had to change the plan. And that made it so much easier for us. And when we did a bathroom, as much as they didn't like it, Mel and I would leave the block together and we'd go to Beaumont Tiles and we'd go to Reese. And we would choose all the fixtures and fittings that we want together. and the block would get upset about it. Keith and Dan give me a hard time about it. But we were finished on Monday. We knew exactly what we wanted. We agreed on it together, and then we could just work for the next 6 days.
Yeah.
And that sort of made us a bit of a power couple. It also helped that at the same time, most of the times we didn't start till Tuesday because they were so far behind in the build. And I'm thinking, well, there's no point us both hanging around here having a thumb war. We might as well go out and sort stuff out for the block. And it ended up being beneficial.
Yeah. And so anyone who's thinking, either listening or watching on our YouTube channel about going onto the block, you might go, don't know, 400,000 prize money's worth all this. It sounds like it's sort of really challenging, but I just love the way that, you know, you start off with this thing thinking I and me, and it ended up becoming us and we, and then it's that work together, that collaboration that absolutely got you through. And I only met Mel for the first time at the VIP night, and you could just tell straight away that she just knew she was very comfortable wherever that auction went, because you guys, what you got from that experience was going to be far greater than any dollar amount could be at the end of it, because she just felt like, you would have been shattered if you didn't make any money, but I got the sense she just felt like she'd really just grown through that experience. So kudos to you two for doing that.
There's no God-given right that you get to go on the block and win money.
No.
And we've seen it before. You could win $5,000, $10,000. Some people haven't even sold in previous blocks. So it's been a bit of a crescendo in prize money over the last sort of couple of seasons. But, you know, the market, it's a real market. I think the block is its own ecosystem is what I say. And we had 5 auctions last Saturday in St Kilda at $3 million plus. Now, not too many homes sell for over $3 million in St Kilda on any given week, let alone 5 at once.
100%.
Now, 5 of the same property in any market throughout Australia is a big ask. So it does need its ecosystem. So the investors are well and truly there, alive and well. The depreciation schedules, that's why we really hammer them home. But there are still some people who, like we sold to a lady and her husband who are going to live there, and you're pretty happy with that.
So like my goal coming into it, so typically these homes do sell to investors. They make fantastic investments. I really wanted to sell to an owner-occupied. I wanted to sell to someone who appreciate the thought that we went into the design, who appreciate the quality of the tradesmanship that went into it, the level of execution, and also the sophistication that we brought to it. And I was thinking it was going to be an executive couple, like, you know, a doctor or a lawyer, one of those sort of upper echelons.
Yes.
And we literally sold to a husband-wife couple. He's a doctor, she's a lawyer, and they're going to live in the home. And I feel as though we won the block in that respect, that we sold to someone who loves our home and wants to move in.
Great distinction. I love that. Just the fact that you get the reward both ways, in the sense of the monetary and the emotional reward, that you did produce a product that someone valued to that sort of extent. Pete, the other thing, and I'm going to take over now, because I want to know.
Before you do that, can I just say one thing, and before you just go there, because I don't want to skip over something that's really important, and that was the initial comments made about Jesse at the start of the block to the end, because I think that's really important. And knowing Jesse, we're very, very close. So knowing Jesse really well, he has got that ability. He's a duck. He can literally shake it off and move on. A lot of people can't.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jesse's such an incredible product of his beautiful family. Now, I met his mum and dad and sisters on auction day, beautiful girls, and just such warm and loving parents as well. They were so proud of you. And it's interesting when people make comments like that and without knowing someone. And I get it. I'm not. It's not necessarily a major sort of criticism, because it's just commentary, really.
Yeah.
But there's people with a life, and when you get to know the guy and know where his heart truly is, and the love he has for his partner in Mel, and to hear his mum and dad and sisters talk, they were bursting with pride. And just so proud. And what I want to get to is because social media is such a big factor in today's life. And just before kicking back over to you, Rick, but I just want to touch on this social media stuff, because you get hit pretty hard with social media, and that's all the contestants. And I'm talking significantly like people with the strongest opinions, right, wrong, or indifferent, that they're offering in terms of personalities and workmanship and just life stuff. How do you deal with that? And I want you to answer this in such a way that how do you deal with it? You're a bit of a different beast, like, because you just seem to make that glass half full all the time. But what would be your comment there around how it affects you, Mel, families, other contestants?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. Like I'm a very positive person, always the optimist. And so when I was receiving criticism on social media, especially for the first half of the show, it honestly did not affect me because I didn't know these people and I knew that I was right most of the time what I was talking about. And so that made it easier for me. But I was struggling with how it was affecting Mel, how it was affecting like my mum, my grandma, my sisters, because I wouldn't go on there. I wouldn't read 500 comments, negative comments that were made about me. I'll just laugh about it and I look at it and go, well, that's a stinger, almost like a stand-up comedy joke. I was like, what a ripper, that bloody, that was a perler right between the eyes, that one. And I'd laugh it off, but to them, they struggled with it.
Yeah.
And I know like my grandma was upset about it, my mum, my sisters.
So how did you deal with that? How did you help them cope through it?
Similar to the way I helped other contestants cope with it on the show, I get a real sense of joy by helping other people. And so I would call them to comfort them and to consult with them to make them feel better. And by making them feel better about it, to not worry about it, was making myself feel better. I think it's my personality trait, being an extrovert. I feed off other people's energy. And so when I would speak to them and they were down, I'd make it my mission to make them happy. To like, don't worry about it, and I would explain the backstory to it. So then that way, when they were talking to someone about it, instead of having a really emotional response, they could explain like, well, the Victorian building standard, you don't need a second floor waste. Instead of he said, she said. And I was explaining to them my thought behind every decision I was making. And then that was helping them cope with it. And yeah, I'm very fortunate. Like it is water off a duck's back and it doesn't get me down. I feel as though you sign up for it. And honestly, like I've been on social media since I was 14 years old on MySpace. I've never left a comment about a stranger, and it has to be a really good post that a friend of mine does for me to even comment on that, right? That's the sort of person I am. So the type of person who would go on there and leave a nasty comment about someone they've never met before, have no idea, haven't been through the experience, you are not someone whose opinion that values to me, and you cannot upset me at all.
I think we just stopped the interview right there. If you can't take that, I mean, that's the beauty. We've talked about this with other guests, Pete, haven't we? If you don't value the person, don't value the feedback, but it's easier said than done.
Yeah,
and because we are human. And, I think the latest study I saw since 2007, the rate of emotional, mental health challenges and emotional well-being challenges has doubled. Now, there's an interesting point there. What happened in 2007? The smartphones went very smart. It was the launch of the iPhone. It was the launch of the App Store. It was the launch of this ability for everyone to take a photo, everyone to make an opinion, and everyone to be all of a sudden keyboard warriors. We see someone on a TV show for 45 minutes and we think we know what that person is, so we'll now make a comment on their whole life.
Yeah.
And as you say, it wasn't worrying you so much, it was worrying the people you love about the most. And, I think that my view on that is, I just think Jesse's just summed that up beautifully, Pete. It's as good as you can do it. Now, I'm going to take over again. I'm going to hijack here. Because everyone I've talked to go, what is that show? Like, that show's a setup. They've got Channel 9 executives buying it. They've got, okay, sorry, where are you getting all this information from? Oh, I followed it, mate. Don't worry, on social media. I go, oh, okay, all right. Everyone is an expert there. So talk us through, the inner workings of the block. I mean, from an auctioneer standpoint, Pete, how much of that is actually brought to the vision? Because you see maybe 5 minutes of an auction. You don't see the full sort of auction scenario where buyer agents are going out and talking to their, prospects coming back in again. It's totally different to a standard everyday garden variety auction you do every Saturday in front of quality property. Talk us through what the differences were there.
Well, there's a certain amount of time that you're going to have on TV. So there's things that sell and make people watch TV. That's theatre and action and something happening and a good storyline and all that sort of stuff. So they do need to cut it and trim it. I actually felt I did one of the best preambles to an auction I've ever done in my life.
And we didn't see it.
Zero was shown. Luxury, sophistication, bespoke.
You took every word I'd used to describe the property. Pete took it out of my mouth. I had a tear in my eye listening to it. And one of my friends said, "Did you write that for Pete?" Because it was like you were speaking about the property. It was amazing, Pete. You did a really good job.
Thank you. But anyway, that didn't get shown. So that has to be cut. So there was a lot that was missing. I dragged that auction out twice as long as what people thought I dragged it out, but I actually dragged it out twice as long. In fact, I went to Danny, who was the underbidder, going, I said once, twice, going, going to ask you for one more. Can you just give me one more? And so that was all just a bit humorous and all that sort of stuff. But when you're doing an auction there, you're not doing it for the camera. You're doing it for Jesse.
Yeah.
And you're doing it for the
Mel.
crowd.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. Jesse and
Of course
Mel.
you are. You're doing it for Jesse and Mel. And you're doing it for the audience there. And I fed off that. You do not even think for 1 second about the viewer and the person at home.
Yeah.
That's my job. And it was interesting. So that was one side of it. So significantly cut. The auction started ridiculously high. Good. That was good because they made 300K plus off the bat. That was awesome. So all of a sudden the nerves come down.
Well, 343 ahead from the first bid, weren't we?
So yeah, that's right. And so the ego factor says, well, gee, I didn't get a chance to really show more flair and start low and build it up and all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, is we already got a great deal of money at the start, then just topped on top, and everything was a bonus from there on. Because actually, what wasn't shown as well was, what did you say when that bid came in?
Yeah, the first bid came in and I was like, that's absolutely incredible. And Scotty said, nah, there's more out there. I said, knock it down, Pete. Job well done.
He goes, we're out of here.
Tip your waitresses, we're off.
So the other theatrical piece they did, and Scotty said, oh, he's nervous and all that sort of stuff. Which
this is his first time.
Which there was no more or less nerves than what you'd ever do going into an auction. It's the first time. It's like, well, it's actually my 10,000th time, but first time as a block auctioneer. So that was good. And then the floor manager made me stand in a spot. And then a minute later came up and said, no, you've moved. You've got to move over here. And that's when he moves me on camera. And it's like, mate, you told me to stand over there. He goes, no, I didn't. And I thought, oh, something's going on here.
So
and
you
just
felt
know,
like set.
It's one of those things you've been set up sort of moments. And I thought, oh, there's a story behind this. And
Pete's looking down the floor and there's a piece of tape and he moves over and he's like, isn't the tape over there?
Doesn't X mark the spot? And just for our listening audience and our viewing audience on YouTube, Peter at Caicos has a history as a young auctioneer being put through what's called the novice auctioneer, the state auctioneer competition in Victoria, the Australasian auctioneer, which is to find the best auctioneer across Australia and New Zealand. So he's not adverse to being put into strange situations or being tried to be, tripped up with, bidding and questions and things of that nature. So again, that was something that probably most of the viewers wouldn't have known about you.
Yeah.
And so when Scotty pre-frames said, oh, this is his first time, he'll be a bit nervous. It's like he's not nervous, but he's got high energy. And I was just laughing, thinking this will be like nothing that would worry Peter. But I said to my wife at the time, who knows you very well, mate, and loves you as you know, she said, all he'll be wanting to do is make as much money as he can for Jesse and Mel. I said, that's exactly what he'll be doing.
Yeah.
I knew you'd be focused in on that. So
I did feel like that racehorse and then the gates open and then boom, you're away, and all this pent up sort of just wanted to get on with it and do it. And then when it finishes, it was like that adrenaline rush that you were talking about, Jesse. You actually want to go and do it all again.
Yeah. But time over again, you wouldn't have changed anything. You did it as well as you. Everyone who I know knows you. Said it's a shame they wouldn't have shown a lot more of his flair, but I said they showed enough to remind you what you know about Peter, and therefore to let the public that didn't know about him go, he did a great job. So, mate, you should be bloody proud. We were stoked for you, and we had a big family powwow about it, Jesse, with our eldest son and our youngest son, who you know very well now, and his girlfriend, and it was just clearly, other than the fact that my eldest son thought Damien Cooley was the better auctioneer, I defended you.
He's a good auctioneer. They're all good guys, and I tell you, the camaraderie between the agents of all the houses is exceptional.
Fantastic.
We just get on so well. We're all really, really close friends and all that sort of stuff, and they all know Jesse and that. So everyone wanted everyone to do well. That was the most important thing.
And that's an overriding theme. Everyone wanted everyone to do well. Yeah, and I think the other thing, Pete, is in the past you've always been sort of the agent. It was interesting for you now to actually move from being the agent to actually at least having some major control as the auctioneer.
Yeah, it's great. That's why I first became an auctioneer, because it's nice to sort of see it all the way through an agent. And I was incredibly supported, and Brendan Walker really managed the campaign.
Okay, let's not go too big
My
with
pencil,
Brendo.
he was good with a pencil.
Yeah.
But he's a brilliant
Mr.
guy
Squiggle.
and ran a brilliant campaign as well. So along with all of our team here at the agency, like it was a team effort.
Yeah.
It really was. And you just can't do a block with one or two people. You need the whole team behind you. But the last thing I'll say about that is I'm not worried at how I was portrayed in terms of that first time auctioning. So that's all part of it and all that sort of stuff. I just love being a part of it. I think, Channel 9 and the block and the whole crew, I love the crew and the production people. Like they do an incredible job. Yeah. So however they want to do it, they'll do it.
You're okay with that? Yeah, fair enough. And it wasn't like you didn't have a great product to sell. So getting back to that one, Jesse. So did you arrive in the lounge with Scotty and Mel and just go, we've done everything we can? Was it almost fatalistic, like here we are and whatever happens, happens? Or were you going there thinking, well, the first four have all sold, so there's a strong chance for us? I mean, there was a lot of controversy, if you want to say that, about the order. And, I don't know how much that was edited out or how much was left in for the viewer. But, even the order as well, like the day before, it was talk us through that as a contestant and knowing that you've got a real estate bent on it, but as a contestant.
Yeah, talk me through it too, the order.
We all came to the conclusion, as all the agents contestants, that house one should go first. They had the most number of confirmed bidders and specific to their house. Therefore, you would think if they're only specific to their house, they would have the most competition. They should sell for the most amount of money, set the benchmark really high, and then the other four contestants just can try to chase them down.
Okay, now stop there. So when that first hammer came down, when Cooley's knocked it down and it was the number that was there, what was
372?
What was the first thought in your head?
Well, I was a little bit concerned. I didn't think they had the best house.
No, I get that. Yep.
And I thought, well, everyone else seems to think that they do. Everyone in the media, everything we hear about on Domain, they've got the best house, got the best house. I'm thinking, well, if the best house only got, $380,000, well, then if we tear it down and I'm going last, and typically they get a little bit less and less, I was thinking if I make $200,000, I'll be happy. And that was the figure that I had in my mind. So when Tess and Luke went second, they had the second number of most confirmed bidders and specific to their home, so it made sense that they go second. And then theirs just absolutely run away. Two emotional buyers, both wanted to live there. And, as in real estate, we do say a home's only worth what a buyer's prepared to pay for it. Well, in this case, they were prepared to pay a lot more for it because they wanted to live there and they'll be happy there for the next 10 to 15 years, right? Yep. So the extra couple $100,000 it sold for more than the others is irrelevant compared to how much growth it will have.
Yep.
And that one just ran away. So when that one got up to $630,000, I was thinking, right, well, I think, maybe we won't catch them, but we're probably going to earn around the same as the boys now. We're probably going to get $300,000 or $400,000.
Third one,
we actually wanted to go third. That was the ideal scenario. 3, 4, and 5 all wanted third position. Had to draw it out of a sand bucket, and typical to our story on the block, house 5 last, we had to draw last and got left with the fifth house. But that's just the way it goes. You make the best of any situation, and obviously Matt and Elise went third. They had an awesome auction, got $450,000 over reserve. And then true to form, Deb and Andy came a little bit less, 30,000 less. They got 420. We went last. Obviously, 3 of those houses had already sold to investor clients who all would have been bidding on ours. But we ended up getting $388,000 over reserve and could not be happier with that result.
Okay.
Absolutely ecstatic. From the start, I thought, watching last year, Jess and Norm came last. They got $200,000. I still think that's a good amount of money. Yes, it is a lot of work that you'll put into it, but I genuinely believe that all the money from the block will come after it if you do it properly, not just the winnings. The winnings is a small head start in life. It's a 20% deposit for a house you want to buy, your stamp duty, and you can do a renovation. That's literally all it is. It's not a lotto winning. You're not traveling the world for 12 months and you're not retiring on that money. It's a good little head start. But hopefully the way that Mel and I played it was smart enough that we can actually build off that and maybe create a more comfortable lifestyle after the block, not just on it.
Well, there'll be no doubt about that. And just the last one on that, and then we'll wrap up because we know you've got tough media commitments. Your appointments are just full.
He's got appraisals and...
No, mate. I don't know if you realise he's been hanging out with
he's
Brian
on a media
Lara.
Band now.
He's on Brian Lara. He's been hanging out with Brian Lara. He's been hanging out with Usain Bolt. Ricky Ponting's just a B grader with this man now.
Brett Lee.
Oh, Binger. We love Binger, don't we? We had a chat about that off air. When the reserves came out all exactly the same, what was your immediate gut reaction to that?
Euphoria.
Yeah.
I thought every single person is going to make $200,000 minimum when I saw that reserve. And I think, thank you very much to Channel 9. They were obviously pretty generous to everyone this year. I think it's a reflection of the hard work and the effort that every single contestant put in.
Yeah.
Typically the show goes for 10 to 11 weeks. This one went to 14 weeks. So it was an extra 3 weeks of the biggest, hardest block ever. And they've all said that they'll never do it this size again. They pushed it too far. And it wasn't just for the contestants. The building crew who do the block, they're at their wits' end. All the production crew, because they're massive hours. And you got a sound guy and a producer and a cameraman following you all day. So they're running up 3 flights of scaffold just as many times as you are. They've got a 40 kilogram camera on the side of them. They've got a 20 kilogram soundbite bag that hangs off them. Everybody goes through the drama with you, and everyone is tired.
Yeah.
So they'll never do it that large again. They find ways to make it harder. For instance, this year they let us use the crane, and the price of using the crane is about a carton of beer. It's not too bad when the crane's about $1,500 an hour, so you pay the beer. But last year at the Gatwick, they weren't allowed to use the crane. They had to take everything up the stairs. So they do find ways to make it just as hard, but they'll never do it as big.
And an idea of size as well. The average block property is about 240 to 250 square metres, and this year they're 460 odd square metres. So they're, best part of double the size. It's interesting that we had one of the previous block properties on the market going back a few months ago, and I walked in and looked around and said, did they finish this in a week?
Well, I think the other thing is that I only got to see the ground level of your one, because on the VIP night, I think there was 3 stories, which was absolutely jammed, packed with people. In fact, it was so funny. I was just saying to Jesse Pete off air that when Gay and I arrived for the VIP night, people have been looking at all of them from 5:30 onwards, and they all queued up to look through Jesse and Mel's. Like, they all wanted to get in there, and I could hear this guy chatting to the lady who was at the door, won't give her name, but she's just like, "Oh, sorry, so this is a VIP function." It's like, yeah, but we want to. What does it take to get in? Like, this is, and this wasn't some Generation Next guy. This was a guy who was in the autumn of his life, wanted to look through this because he wanted to see the floor pattern that Jesse had sort of done. He wanted to see it, wanted to walk on it, and then I just walked on straight on through, and the guy goes, "Well, he hasn't got a badge on. He hasn't got a." Like, it was almost like scary, but I didn't get to see the whole thing. I was mesmerised by the pattern work on the floor. That was just outstanding. The wine rack that we talked about at a previous meeting.
Mosaic tiles, 115,000.
I know. I looked at it and I just thought, but then
215.
I couldn't move from. I was pinpointed out in the courtyard because the place was absolutely humming, and the fact that so many people there just wanting the best for you guys kind of confirms, I think, what Pete started off with. Australia gets to see a capitalised image of you. He's arrogant, he's cocky, he's all those sorts of things. No, what he is he's very clear on what he wants. He's very passionate about what he wants to achieve. He has a plan, he has a vision. He's not stating a preference. He's making an absolute commitment. He didn't do it on his own. He did it with a life partner. His thrill out of it is that their love and their connection has just gone to a much deeper level. And the fact that they've got some money from it is one part of the equation. The fact that they know how they'll operate under the worst of times together is a real bonus, I would think. And the fact that, my gut feeling is that this is just the tip of the iceberg for what you will turn this into is something I'm excited to sort of watch and follow and watch that journey. And I think you both should be bloody proud, not just for representing your brand, the agency, which is a stunning sort of scenario in itself, just the way you conducted yourselves as human beings. Pete's one of my closest friends, Jesse, and I couldn't have been more prouder of it. And I texted him that night when I saw the vision, and I was sending him best wishes. I was sending you too. But what I've now learned since you've been involved in helping our middle son buy his first real estate property, and the fact that his future mother-in-law thinks you're hot, which is, that's okay, Anya, whatever floats your boat. The fact that Jim thinks you're hotter, which is worrying me, I'm not too sure, but the fact that everyone who's engaged with you that I know from a third-party standpoint say, he's exactly different to what people project him to be is really what's summing up Pete's point there about the fact that you have grown and have been sort of seen for ultimately who you are, not the snapshot we see on a Sunday night or a Monday night or whenever the block is on.
Yeah, and that's what I saw about 14 to 15 months ago. And when Jesse quit his previous job at the end of the year, we played golf in January, and he said, "I got something to tell you. Bit of a secret at the moment, but I might be on the block." It's like, wow. Because I'm trying to recruit him at that stage. He goes, "So I'm making no decision about where I'm going until I finish the block," which was finished in about June or something like that. So. So he really was in limbo, and when it was the agent sort of decision time or choice that the contestants had, and Jesse came through, we it wasn't a lay down misère that he was going to use us. We thought we're a good chance here. However, unfortunately they, which actually ended up all right, but they did throw a curveball in terms of they had to win a challenge to then pick the agent. I was like, oh my God, if Jesse does come and work for us, and another contestant chooses me, it's going to be again. So for those who don't know, my wish did come true, and Jesse did join the agency in July this year, and works here out of this Albert Park office, and and plans to further dominate the St Kilda and surrounds sort of area, which he's doing an incredible job. He's an incredible agent and well-rounded guy. People just gravitate towards him and his energy, as your son experienced, Rick, in terms of being able to have real conversations and support and nurture those buyers, whether they're, and the vendors, whether they're selling their 1 or 2 bedroom apartment or whether they're selling their 10 or 12 or $15 million home. Jesse just offers something special. So we're incredibly proud. I'm incredibly proud to have him alongside me every single day. And the journey is going to get even better, mate. I assure you of that.
And just taking a finer point to that, Peter, we did experience it through our family connection buying, and our son Chris and his beautiful partner Jessica, and Jessica's parents Jim and Enya, and we all said the same thing when we did the family debrief, that Jesse has this unique way of getting inside your shoes and walking with you through it. Not here's the deal, here's the number, make the number work. It's virtually, I get it. I know what you're going through. But here's what if it was me, this is what I'd be thinking. Don't focus there so much. Focus here. Get this happening, because it's certainly wasn't that they got it under market, or it's not that they got it under their budget. They had to stretch. In fact, they had to beg, borrow, and steal. I'm actually charging 17% interest on the extra money, Christopher, that I lent you. I'm only joking. But the point I guess I'm trying to make is, if there's one thing that connects quality people that we've interviewed on this podcast all the way through, Pete, is their absolute empathy to understand what someone else is going through. The fact that you heard Jesse say that when he wasn't worried about what was being said about him, he was worried about how his grandmother was taking it, how his mother was taking it, how his sisters were taking it, how Mel was taking it, tells us that he's outward thinking and about, what's best for you is going to be best for me. And so let's just make sure that's the case. But if you are looking for an agent who is going to help you through the buying, selling, designing process and can give you advice, we'll make sure that Jesse's details are available on this link here. You won't get a more direct, honest, open guy in the game of real estate than Jesse Raeburn. It's been my absolute pleasure to deal with him through our family situation. Couldn't use any of my smart lines on him, Pete. Didn't work. The vendors still just got a good result. Everyone got a good result. But we're hoping you're enjoying this interview. We're hoping that you can share it with your networks. Most importantly, rate the information. If you do want to leave some positivity, Jesse will read it. If you want to leave some negativity in the comments, we won't read it. None of us will care. But we do actually want to take this opportunity of saying congratulations, Peter Kakos, the best auctioneer I know, the best auctioneer I've ever seen. And I've seen him work in the field. I've seen him work under competition. He is elite at what he does. And to Jesse and to Mel, congratulations to you two for producing what was said by third-party independent people as the best property on the block. And I was there listening to a quantity surveyor give that direct feedback to about 150 people that somehow fitted into your kitchen terrace area. But also, can I just say that we also want to say congratulations to all the contestants on the block who seemingly all did incredibly well, and we look forward to hearing about the ongoing success of the block moving forward, because I'm pretty sure the one-time novice auctioneer may get another gig back, and I'm sure that Jesse will be somehow involved in whoever is involved from this particular company's organisation, if that's the case. Could be against each other. Anything is possible. So on behalf of Peter Kakos, one of the world's greatest auctioneers, Jesse Raeburn, one of the world's greatest guys, and Rik Rushton, saying thank you again for another wonderful episode, and thank you for your subscription, and keep on listening.
Beautiful. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
We trust you enjoyed listening to Voices of Value, a shared conversation between Rik Rushton, Peter Kakos, and their valued guests. Their views are not necessarily those of the wider world, but they should be. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or your preferred podcast source, and we love to hear both your feedback and ratings on the content we provide. Additional information can be sourced through our website, voicesofvaluepodcast.com. Join the conversation again next week when